Last night, the Sacramento Kings went up 2-0 on the Golden State Warriors, and things are not looking good for the Dubs at all. Not to mention, there's potentially going to be no Draymond in Game 3. There's also the fact that in NBA history, only 7.2% of teams who go down 0-2 end up winning the series. And Stephen Curry has never been down 0-2 in the playoffs, so this is pretty much uncharted territory for this core. This might be the end for the Golden State Warriors. Let's talk about it. Before I get into this video, if you end up enjoying it, please be sure to subscribe to the channel. I am uploading daily for the NBA playoffs. I'm doing the same thing over on my second channel, which is nearly at 100K, so if you can go subscribe over there, that would be much appreciated. So the odds are heavily stacked against the Warriors at this point. That much is clear, but we also knew their issues going on the road in this series. In my prediction for this series, I said that the Dubs were going to need to win one game away. And that's obviously true just mathematically, but it really needed to be, in my opinion, one of these first two games for them to feel comfortable and secure throughout the rest of the series. Now, of course, they head to Golden State for Game 3 with their back against the wall in a must-win game. They really needed that away game early to get the pressure off, and that obviously has not happened. Speaking of my prediction, I also got a decent chunk of flack for what I said about Jordan Poole in that video and how I predicted he would often, if not consistently for the whole series, be a negative for the Golden State Warriors, but that's exactly what he has been through these first two games to a pretty significant degree. Here are Jordan Poole's numbers over the first two games. It's just absolutely terrible. He's been a negative when on the floor because he isn't really playmaking much to mitigate the fact that he's not doing much offensively scoring-wise, and his defense is, of course, not amazing. The problem with players like Jordan Poole, the more microwave shot creator type of guys, is often, not all of the time, but often, if they're not scoring the ball, they are providing very little actual value and very little that actually contributes to winning the game. But not to put too much of the blame on Jordan Poole, a lot of his issues kind of stem from an overall issue with the Golden State Warriors, which is that they are just comically, cosmically, ludicrously off of the freaking charts, ridiculously bad when Stephen Curry is not on the floor. Now, a little bit of a fourth wall break here. As I was doing the research for this video, I knew, because I have two eyes, that the Golden State Warriors are worse when Steph is off the floor. Not only because I have two eyes, but it just logically makes sense that the team's better off with their superstar player than without. I knew that was the case, and it's understandable for it to be the case, and if anything, it would be weird if it wasn't. But when I said it is off of the charts and doesn't make any sense a second ago, I meant that shit. The Warriors are plus 62.7 on offense when Steph is on the floor, and that's not because Steph has some insane plus. He is only plus 5.6 in offensive rating, which is good, but not off of the charts. What is off of the charts is the Warriors are a negative 57.1 on offense when he is off of the floor. The Dubs in the first two games score 91.7 points per 100 possessions without Steph on the floor. To put that into some context for you, for just how bad that truly is, the worst offensive rating in the entire league this year came from the Charlotte Hornets, who scored 109 points per 100 possessions. The worst offense in the league is outscoring the Warriors without Steph by 17 on average. Hell, to make it even more ridiculous, in 1991, the league's worst offensive rating was from the Sacramento Kings, ironically, and they were still 10 points per game better per 100 possessions than this Warriors team is without Steph. But it's not just the offense, actually. The Kings are also 40 points better offensively with Steph off of the floor. Now, that's not because Steph makes the Warriors 40 points better defensively, because that would be absurd for a large variety of reasons. It would make him the greatest defender there is. But the reason this happens is when Steph steps off of the floor, the Sacramento Kings smell blood in the water, and they really push to go for a run, specifically when Steph is off of the floor. It has been so deliberate, in fact, that I am quite confident this is explicitly a strategy the Kings have been employing, because often you'll see Steph check out of the game, and the Kings throw one of their better lineups out there just in time to take advantage of that. Essentially, the Warriors cannot afford to sit Stephen Curry, but the problem with that is he can't play 48 minutes a game. They have to sit him. If Steph could play 48 minutes a game and not drop in production subsequently from just being exhausted, then the Warriors would be up 2-0 right now and this video would not be being made. But that's just too much to ask of one player. You need his teammates to step up to the plate, but they just absolutely have not. And I'm really not betting on them to turn it around, to be honest, because this is an issue that has existed with the Warriors for a long time, but obviously not to this degree. But now it's to this degree because of another thing I talked about in that prediction video, which was the issue with depth for this team. Looking at their bench production, Gary Payton II has played good, and that's it. Dante DiVincenzo is getting 16 minutes of action a game, and they had to throw Moses Moody in last game, for God's sakes. After their 5 starters and Gary Payton, the Dubs are getting nothing out of their players. Meanwhile, take a look at the Sacramento Kings, and the contrast is hilarious. Malik Monk is scoring 25 points per game off of the bench. If you were to look at the reputations that Jordan Poole has versus Malik Monk, you would think that Jordan Poole was the one scoring 25 per game. But now looking at it, you would think that Malik Monk is the player who's about to get $25 million per year on his contract. I think it's actually 30. On top of Malik scoring 25 a game, Davion Mitchell is playing phenomenal defense and hitting his shots, creating a little bit of offense even. Trey Lyles is shooting 50% from 3 on 4 attempts per game. Alex Len has done his job pretty well in the 10 minutes that he plays while Sabonis is off of the floor. This team is 8 players deep, hell 9 players deep if Keegan Murray just figures himself out, versus a team that has been 6 players deep, with the other guy who's supposed to be this team's 6th man, supposed to be contributing offensively for them, actively hurting them when he is on the floor. And just like the bench issues that the Warriors have do not exist for the Sacramento Kings, the over-reliance on their star players also does not exist for the Sacramento Kings. Obviously, the Kings are better with their stars, or at the very least De'Aaron Fox on the floor, but it's not to this comical degree by comparison to when they're off. In fact, Domantas Sabonis has actually been a little bit more of a negative than a positive so far for the Kings. And the Kings are only 10 points better with De'Aaron Fox on the floor, which is not some crazy number. That's because this is a basketball team with multiple good NBA basketball players who play together. Crazy concept. Meanwhile, the Warriors are relying entirely on Stephen Curry to carry them, and they're probably going to lose this series. The odds would suggest their chances are incredibly slim, and if they do lose this series, hell, even if they don't, they're gonna need to seriously evaluate this team come the offseason, because this is just not built to win at the highest level. You need depth, you need players to do things when the best player is not on the floor. Like, that feels very fundamental and basic, like do stuff without your best player occasionally, but it really seems like an impossible task for this team. And so long as that task seems to be impossible for them, this is not a contending NBA roster. That much is clear. Meanwhile, the Sacramento Kings have stepped it up to look even better than they already did in the regular season. Their defense is significantly better than we expected it to be in this postseason. Obviously, we knew they would step it up, but for it to be to this degree has been quite insane to watch. And combine that with the teamwork versus the over-reliance on one player, this almost looks like a matchup comparable to, like, obviously the difference is not as significant, but like looking at like the Spurs versus like LeBron and the Cavs in 2007. It's one guy and a roster that's not doing jack shit for him versus a basketball team with multiple players who play together and play together well. It's not a good look for the Warriors, and it's probably over. It's not impossible to come back. The heart of the champion and all that shit, but it's not looking good. Shout out to Rudy for editing this video, and goodbye.